Okay, how you doing, everybody? And welcome to episode number 85 of the John Riley Project. I am so pleased to have as my guest today, Kathryn Cloward, an award-winning book series author, performing songwriter, media publisher, producer, and serial entrepreneur. How you doing, Kathryn?
Good. I'm so glad to be here. And I love the purple branding you've got with your logo and the curtains, and I'm fitting in.
Yes, you are. So I should be wearing purple too. So welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
You know, we were comparing notes, and we have mutual friends. We were talking about, Gabby Dow and Steve Dow, and they've been on the show, and you knew them, and that's how we connected.
Yes.
And I know Steve did a podcast with you because you have your own podcast.
Yeah.
And that's great how it's interesting how we connect.
Absolutely.
And how people, find each other.
Yes. And the joy and the willingness to want to help each other spread our messages and the interlinking of that and the ripple of that is just beautiful, and it's never ending.
Never ending.
Never ending.
So, when Steve contacted me, he says, you need to talk to Kathryn. I mean, it's just a remarkable young lady, and she has all of this incredible story as an entrepreneur and as a writer and as a musician. And I was just going through your bio, and you can see I have all these notes, and it's all highlighted, and there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, where the heck do we start? So where do you want to start? I want to learn about you. I mean, what's your backstory? How did you get started in your career? And take me down this path, this journey you've been on, and how it's going.
Right. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here and have the opportunity to share. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, that's always an interesting question because people are like, what do you do? Like, what do you actually do? Because at different times, they see me this way, but really there's just all this other stuff that's happening. But, ultimately, I've just always believed in possibilities. And I've always, I've never really enjoyed being boxed in. And so that's kind of the trajectory of my career is that, I can shift on a dime and see solutions. So, but ultimately I was raised with 3 older brothers and my parents, they raised us in this really, we were kind of like a lower middle class family. I had no clue what that even was. Like I didn't know. We just had this life and we were very involved. My parents were very involved in scouting and Boy Scouting, very involved in the church that we grew up in. And that kind of linked us, to Father Joe. Well, we were linked to Father Joe very much. And here I am decades later, and I'm, writing a book for him now. And so I'm just looking back at my life going, whoa, it's so incredible how everything just connects and links. And but why I bring up my family structure is I think so much about who I am is it was shaped during that time of being the only girl and the youngest in this very masculine energy household. And I was, my nature is I'm a very expressive, sensitive, creative, imaginative person. And that didn't necessarily fit into that family.
Masculine toxicity.
Well, maybe sometimes. I didn't necessarily have a voice, which is very important to share. Now, my brothers, we all have different ways we look at our upbringing, but for me, this is my story, right? And so that imaginative play that I did in my room where I would write songs and I would fantasize and imagine and I would give speeches, and I'm doing all those things now. So what was interesting is this imagination that I had as a little girl, I have manifested that into my life. And it wasn't immediate. I lived this interesting winding road that all connected. And why I share that with you is because that's what I see in children now. That's, my passion. One of my main lead passion projects is bringing my childhood nickname, Kathryn the Grape, to life as a series of books and music.
That was your childhood nickname?
Yes. Well, it wasn't my family childhood nickname. Actually, my entire family calls me Mitzi.
Mitzi?
So, yeah.
That's like an old-fashioned name. I like that.
I know. So my name is Kathryn, and my parents couldn't decide on, my dad wanted to nickname me Katie, and my mom didn't want that, and they definitely didn't want Kathy, and they just couldn't agree on a shortened version of Kathryn, so it was just Kathryn. But somewhere when I was a little girl, the story goes that they used to call me Miss Priss, right? When I was little. Again, 3 older brothers. And so they used to call me Miss Priss, Missy, and that turned into Mitzi. And so my dad, so here I am, a grown woman, and my brothers call me Mitz. My dad, he passed a few years ago, but he always called me Mitzi Bell. And so that's what I was called in my family. But I had this softball coach by the name of Mr. Perosi. We all called him Mr. P. He was this amazing volunteer. He was a blues angel. He had this incredible career in the Navy.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and he was a blues angel. And then he volunteered for a few decades, really, helping young girls in softball. Right?
Nice.
And he lived in the neighborhood. We all know his wife and his daughter. And anyways, he would give us all kind of nicknames, probably mainly as a way to remember, 75 girls every season that he was helping out on all the teams. Yeah. And so I loved the color purple, and I wore it all the time. Plus, it was the colors of our Navajo softball at the time. But I wore it all the time. So he called me Kathryn the Grape. So that's what he always called me from the time I was 11. If he saw me, we grew up in San Carlos, so we were, whether it was at Cow's Mountain or the lake, or I ran into him at the grocery store, he's like, Kathryn the Grape. And he always just called me that. And so that came to life all these, a few decades later. It was actually my mom's idea to make that as a childhood, as a children's book character. It wasn't my idea. It was my mom's idea. Because my mom's a prolific, she's a I should say a voracious reader, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
She's a reader, and she always wanted to write a book. And so she and I talked about it a little bit, and then nothing came to fruition. And then about 10 years later, which was 10 years ago, I started. And so I do what I do really because the little girl inside of me was expressing herself through me.
Yeah.
And as I was learning and growing and developing some tools of self-love that I desperately needed as a grown woman, that I was having all these wonderful kind of new awarenesses about myself, I wanted my son to have those, and I wanted all children to have them. And that's why I do what I do. So what I'm learning, I want to share with other people.
So is Kathryn the Grape that's your nickname, but it's a character in a children's book.
Yes.
And then this book you co-wrote with your mom?
Yes. Well, backing up, no. She actually didn't take my mom. Mom, you're going to sit over here for a little while.
Right.
But there's a lot happening with Kathryn the Grape. So Kathryn the Grape is this illustrated character.
Okay.
Right? And the first full series that I've completed is called Kathryn the Grape Affirmations series. So there's 7 books in this series that each book teaches ultimately an affirmation. I am magical. I am colorful. I am love. I am kind. I am unique. I am grateful. I am joyful. Those are the 7 Kathryn the Grape affirmations. And each book is really like this journey that this character goes on of learning about herself, which the buzzwords are social emotional learning, self-development.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law is a teacher, and she's just like, Kathryn, your books are totally social emotional learning. I was like, what's that? And she goes, that's like the biggest thing now. And I was like, that's what I do.
Right.
It's not like I knew that was a thing. I just was like, this is what I needed as a grown woman, and I wanted to give it to children. So I take these really big concepts, right, and I simplify. So, for example, I think that it's easier to take the concept of gratitude and write 15 chapters on different stories of gratitude, right? And talking about gratitude when life is going great. But to simplify what truly is the root of gratitude to children, to help children see it through another child, that's what I do. And that's what Kathryn the Grape is. So she's this ordinary everyday girl, the character, goes to school, plays sports, she likes to play music, but she is on this kind of personal journey, which is what children are going through. I was going through that stuff when I was a little girl, like that self-analysis, the where do I fit in, the social comparison. The gratitude book, the Kathryn the Grape's Grateful Garden, talks a lot about social comparison. And so, who's not doing that? right now.
Right. Well,
you know, even my son the other day was like, Mom, I need a new phone. I was like, you've got a really great phone.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, and some people don't have a phone, you know? And so we went through the same thing at teaching Kathryn the Grape is, you know, this is what we have. And there's some people who might have more, some people who might have seemingly less, but the gratitude is being happy with what you have and who you are.
Yes.
With that. And that's a concept that we need generationally, not just our children. Everybody needs it. And so my hope with Kathryn the Grape, or not my hope, but my goal, of course, is it's very message centric. Like the message matters most to me.
Yes.
And who's getting those messages? Children's books aren't going anywhere. They exist, and parents want children to read books. You know, like get them off the tablet. They want to read the books.
Yeah.
But if you're listening, you know, who listens to music in the car with their kids? Parents.
Right.
Right? So if you're reading along with your children, you're aware of what your children are reading, you're aware of what your children are listening to, you're getting the message too. So everyone's getting the same message. And then I took Kathryn, so I was in this kind of elementary school age group, which is where the affirmation series really hits. Mm-hmm. But I was doing a lot of Kathryn the Grape shows, and the age group for the shows are younger children. And my books are more wordy than for younger children. So I was like, you know what? I need to age her down. And so now, and I had kind of always planned on doing this full thing, but I was like, we need to do it now. So in the past year, we've produced a lot of material. And so this affirmation series is done and out. It comes in a black and white version as well. And then I've just aged Kathryn the Grape down to be a preschool character in the Let's Read Together series. And that's where I brought my mom back in. I said, Mom, let's do this together.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so my mom and I made all the decisions for that series together. And it just came out with 8 books that are kind of these traditional stories, like, 3 Little Kittens, Wheels on the Bus, but with Kathryn the Grape characters.
Okay.
And then that series is the one that can grow exponentially. Like this is kind of like, this is this series. And then I have a different illustrator who aged Kathryn the Grape down, and we're just boom, boom, boom.
But you're still teaching valuable life lessons.
Yes.
In the age down version.
Yes. So for example, I'm so excited. I just got the illustrations back for a book that's called Kathryn the Grape's Treasure Box with Tools of Love. Okay, so this series, the affirmation series, ultimately there's these 7 affirmations, and each affirmation comes with like a tool that she gets: the magical wand, the charm bracelet, the coin that says "I love you," a pouch with kindness confetti. Okay, it's all like interwoven. My mind's like a matrix, right?
This is good. This is good.
And so then the Grateful Garden, she gets, oh my gosh, I can't even think of what's in the Grateful Garden tool at the moment. Oh, the key I'm worried at the key that opens, the key to gratitude is love. And then the joyful book is the butterfly wings, because we're all free to fly. So I wanted to teach all these concepts to kids, but to younger children, but they needed to be aged down, like age appropriate.
Yeah.
Just like these are the concepts I teach adults in my adult songs.
Right.
So one day in the spring, I knew I wanted to do it. I was like, should I do 7 books, or how should I do this? And then in March, I was in Sedona, like my most sanctuary destination.
Yeah.
Yes. And I just got woken up one morning, and poof, the book just came to me. And like I received it, and that's how I receive basically everything. Just kind of comes to me that way. I just receive it. It's just like kind of channeled through me, and poof, I wrote the book. And so we had to kind of get all these other books done, and then I just sent over. And I always storyboard. I have to see it in my mind first before I can have somebody create an illustration. And so I sent over the storyboards to her. And I just got the illustrations back. So that book, I'm pushing that through, because that's the book I just want to give to kids. I just want everyone needs this book.
Yeah.
So now you're right, age down. So we're getting the same messages of love, just age appropriate, right?
Yeah.
And then we age up, and then we'll keep aging up.
Right, because they're timeless principles that we all need to learn or have reinforced.
Yes.
So this is fascinating, because as an author, there's another person that used to live here in Poway, and he lives in Utah now, and he's created his own series of children's books, and it's called the Tuttle Twins.
Okay.
And what he's doing, it's similar. He's teaching very, very valuable life lessons. He's trying to educate children. He's taking kind of heady concepts and then kind of simplifying them, and so they're more digestible for a young child. I just think that's a great mission in general, trying to teach children maybe messages that they don't necessarily get in their regular school format, right? But at the same time, I think as an entrepreneur, it creates all kinds of great opportunities for you to not only, for you to have success and at the same time do it by helping other people.
Yes. Well, I am a businesswoman, and meaning like, and what I mean by that is there's this creative side of my brain and the strategic business side of my brain, and then now it used to kind of be separate, and now it's all interwoven, which is beautiful. But interwoven within everything Kathryn the Grape is an entire merchandising line. I just haven't gotten there yet. We're not there yet, But 2020 is when I plan on having the Kathryn the Grape doll come out and getting these tools.
Oh, so the possibilities are endless.
They're endless. But the thing is why I say the message matters to me most is because what Kathryn the Grape represents, that is the integrity of Kathryn the Grape. I've never wavered from that.
Right on.
That is I will never sell out.
You can't.
I can't.
Yeah.
And, personally, I can't. I just would go against every energetic
Agreed.
part of who I am. And so the message, I had to get very clear and complete my core message before I could do any of this other stuff. And that matters to me tremendously. And so when people be like, Kathryn, oh my gosh, you could have this, you could have this, you could have this. And I was like, I'm so glad you see it. Because yes. And it will be. And for me, John, I always, like years ago when the vision first came to me, which was a decade ago, I was like, if Dora the Explorer is on sippy cups, Kathryn the Grape can be on sippy cups too.
Yeah, that's right.
Sippy cups weren't the lead. The message had to be the lead.
Yes. And then if you compromise your principles or dilute the message, then you become unauthentic, and then all the vision of the future just doesn't happen. So for sticking to your integrity and keeping that character real and true is so crucial.
Yes, thank you.
To make it work. So, and it might take a little longer, because you want to have it all happen now.
Yes.
But you're doing it the right way, and I think that's cool.
You.
That's great.
Thank you. And it has taken time. And the time has been that I needed to learn the lessons. I can't teach authentically and with integrity a lesson that I haven't learned. I had to learn how I'm magical to teach you about you being magical.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And to simplify those lessons. And that is my greatest, what you were saying with your friend, that is exactly what I do. And when I say about, sometimes it's easier to write in long form, right? But how do you explain to somebody what it feels like to do social comparison in less than 50 words on 2 pages, right? And who doesn't need this? We need that too. Oh. Sometimes we as adults, life is we have so many things happening. But if you talk to a child and you simplify something, it's just it's so simple and easy that we overcomplicate our lives often in ways that we don't need to.
Yeah, so certain things are simply elegant. A lot of my friends,
I like that.
I don't know if he coined that phrase or that's where I remember hearing it, because some things are just so pure, so true, so simple. And children get it, but as adults, you're right. We complicate things because our mind goes all over the place. Yeah. And you commented on this in some of the notes you share with me, how we're worried about the past and anxious about the future, and we don't live in the moment. It just gets everything all confused.
Yes.
I want to go to the part about the magicalness.
Yeah.
And so what's your message there? How are we magical?
That's a great question. Well, I believe that we all have, our magic is inside of us. Our magic, for me, that's the magic of manifestation, the magic of, and I teach that through children, and I don't use the word manifestation because that's a big word for children.
It's a big word for me.
But the magic of, and she gives her this magic wand, but this concept came to me because a friend gave me a coin that says I am magical, and I sat that on my morning kind of meditation area for years, or for months actually, and then the concept was like, this is the direction I need to go, and I ended up putting the coin in a few books later. But that your inner magic is this positive energy that you have inside of you that you are capable of doing of good on this planet. and she can only use her magical wand to do good things. And it's this, figurative thing that Kathryn the Grape gets from Maggie, the magical butterfly. But it helps her to be brave. It helps her to try new things. Our magic is meeting somebody at school, being aware that somebody at school is sitting all by themselves and looks lonely, and that going over there and sitting down and becoming friends with them and that they're funny. What a wonderful thing. Now you have a new friend.
Right.
And so that inner magic that we have that we can put out into the world and do great things and be brave trying new things. Who doesn't need that? How many times even as adults are we like, oh my gosh, I've never done that before and I want to do it. And that we as adults still have we still have fear.
Huge fear.
Right?
Huge.
And so that we all have this inner magic.
Yes.
And I'll never forget when I first, because Kathryn the Grape has gone through a few layers because it's taken me a while and different hurdles I've had to overcome to really stick this out. But I'll never forget early on, this woman emailed me. Her name's Sherry Williamson, and she's a friend of my mom's, and she lives in the Bay Area. And she sent me an email, and she says, Kathryn, I've been reading your book, The Magical One, to my granddaughter. And she just lost her husband a little bit earlier in that year. And she said, you're reminding me that I still have magic inside of me.
Yes,
beautiful.
And
I was like,
yes.
Oh gosh, Kathryn, that's those kind of little stories, that's fuel for my soul to just keep going.
Right.
And so I know I'm on my right path.
Well, because you're emitting positive energy to other people, and then when they respond to you, like you say, it's fuel back to you,
yes.
Which it keeps everything going. It's the beauty of win-win relationships. This is great. And the funny thing is, you're right, as an adult, we deny ourselves that we have our own inner magic.
Yes.
We're fearful.
Yeah.
And we may think maybe we have like a specialness to ourselves, but we'll repress it. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be different. We want to just conform.
Yeah.
And we end up denying ourselves just amazing things.
True. And I agree with that. And I think that it's absolutely natural to still have some fear.
Oh,
right?
It's human.
And to go, but you know what? I'm gonna get rid of those nervous. I call them nervous bubbles. I'm gonna get rid of those nervous bubbles, and I'm gonna proceed on, right? And so that we can overcome that. And I think that's so important. There are plenty of things that I've been like, I've never done. There are plenty of things that I've been fearful of, or had. Oh my gosh, can I do this? I mean, every time I'll be very transparent. Every time before I'm about to do something pretty big. Right? Before I'm about to release something big, mm-hmm. I have a bit of a breakdown. It's like my breakdown before a breakthrough. And I have a friend that I am always able to talk to. She's like used to this pattern with me. But it's like I have to break through another layer of my own being to be brave enough to share. And for me, it's more, if I don't share this, like even with my Kathryn Cloward music, it's very transparent about my journey and life. But it'd be more crushing for me to not do it than to try and not, succeed or whatever that is in that realm. So I always want to encourage people. People often go like, how do you do what you do? I was like, I just surrender. It's a complete surrender. It's not like, I want to do it, but I want to hold on to this piece. It's kind of like you got to jump in and it's going to be scary. But no matter what, it's going to take you someplace different than you are right now.
Yeah, that's such a great message. First of all, I love the whole idea of you break down before you break through. Because I think we all kind of go through that to a certain point because we get right to the precipice of the cliff when we have to make that jump.
Yes.
And it takes a great deal of courage because you've got to break through. But yeah, you're right. I've talked about comfort zones and how we kind of get stuck in our own little world. But once you make that decision to break through, unbelievable things come before you, and your life can change in so many amazing ways.
Yes.
But what we do is we don't surrender, right? We're always holding back. We're fearful. We don't want to let go. But when we take that plunge, amazing things are possible. I think it's an awesome message.
Awesome.
Really is.
Thank you. And I think something really important to share there is I often encounter people who want to know it's going to be like well, once I do, okay, I want to do this thing, but once I do that, how do I know it's going to be what I want? Like what I want? Like they want to know. Everybody wants to know. Wouldn't that be so great if I could say, yes, so when you do this, this is going to be the exact outcome you're going to have.
You don't
right?
know.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
But I'll tell you what, and I used to always say this even in the very beginning of my career, if you're more scared, if what you have right now, if you never try, makes you feel more scared, like do you want to live without ever trying?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because if you're okay with that, then keep doing what you're doing.
And sadly, some people are.
And that's okay for them.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, if that's their choice, because that's the thing is, everything does come down to choice.
Yeah.
Everything. And I know some people don't like that message, because there are things that happen in our life that happen that we don't have a say in, right? But we do have 100% say in how we respond, react, and grow from those experiences. And that's our choice. And so if we have to be accountable for our own choices. And that's an important thing for our children to learn. I teach about the choice point moments in Kathryn the Grape.
Huge.
And we need to know that as adults too, right? Is that, and it's okay for that to be the choice if that's where you're at, if that comfort zone is the place, right? Mm-hmm. But my hope is always that they go, and sometimes people circle back to me, I wasn't ready. And even for me, I can go, there have been times where I was like, I'm not ready to do that. I'm just going to shove that down over here. I'm going to focus over here. But you know what? It lingers. And that's exactly what happened with everything I'm doing right now with music. When I was a little girl, I always dreamed of writing an album of songs. Well, at that time, I wanted a tape.
A cassette tape?
Yeah, aging myself.
Yeah.
But I just wanted a tape that had my name on it with songs that I wrote. I didn't want to be a performer. I wasn't interested in singing someone else's songs. I had something to say, I wanted to say it, and I wanted to write those songs. But I didn't have this musical background. I just knew that there were these messages.
So you knew this at a very young age.
I did.
That's great.
But I had no encouragement in that, because that just wasn't kind of where we weren't musical family, right? And it just wasn't where we were at. And I had so much doubt. But everybody who's known me for a really long time was like, no, this is what I'm doing now is everything I ever wanted to do. But it took me so long to get on this path. And I mean, I even tried when I was 19. I cut a demo tape. Horrific. It is horrible. It's probably in my memory box that I never want to hear. Yeah. But I sent it off to Nashville, and it just nothing. I just didn't believe in myself then. I certainly didn't have the I didn't have the talent. I think talent is something that some people have it innate, but also, for me with singing, I've had to learn. I'm constantly learning. And so I just wasn't ready. And I also hadn't lived enough life to write the songs that I write now. And so years later, which, get me to about 7 years ago, here I had kind of proven to myself over and over and over again that if I put my mind to something, truly set my intention upon it, I could bring it to life. Now, it didn't mean, lots of hard work, dedication, positivity. That's all the attributes my parents taught me. But this was the one thing I always wanted to do, and I completely self-doubted, and I didn't do it. And so there was this little this voice inside of me that would be like, why aren't you, remember who we are, Kathryn? And so one day I was like, I'm doing it. And so Kathryn the Grape actually helped me with that, because this kind of bringing, illustrated me to life and learning this whole business, learning the publishing business, going hey, I'm going to do this on my own. I do everything else. I'm going to figure this whole thing out. But as I brought these stories to life and wanted to do a Kathryn the Grape album, which I chickened out on singing lead on. I had somebody else sing lead on, and it bothered me. It bothered me to have somebody else singing lead on songs that I wrote when that's all I ever wanted to do. But I wasn't ready, and I totally chickened out. And that feeling bothered me so much that I was like, never again am I going to not prepare myself for this. And so I was like, I'm ready to do this. And I put my head down, and I just worked. I took lessons. I took guitar lessons. And I manifested into my life somebody to help me with my first album. And so I did it. And so this little girl in me, I fulfilled that dream of mine. You know, my dream wasn't about being famous. My dream was about completing this project. And so now the dream expands. So I get it when people are scared but I know a lot of people have that. And that's why I bring energy to it right now, is that there are people who have these kind of dormant dreams, these dormant desires that are just inside of them that they don't feel like they can do, whether they may not have the finances or they don't have the time. Those are usually like our main objections we have to overcome for ourselves. And all I always say is just get on the path. Like, I can't tell you, I can't tell anybody what the outcome is, but I'll tell you who you're going to become in the process.
Yes.
And you're going to become more whole, and you're going to become more fulfilled, and you're going to feel really good about yourself. And that is what the ripple you give to your children, so that I can, with integrity, say to my son, like, this is what I always wanted to do, Landon. And now I get to do it. So when I get out and sing, Kathryn the Grape songs or Kathryn Cloward songs, I'm living my dream. What a beautiful thing.
It is. And you're right. It's very completing, very fulfilling. You're no longer doubting yourself or worried. You're just doing what is natural.
Yes.
What you were born to do.
Yes.
Right?
And I had to overcome a lot of doubt. There are so many great artists just in this town.
Oh my gosh. Right? Yeah.
San Diego's so talented. And because I'm older with some life experience, this was not about anything other than the fulfillment of my own spirit, my own, me feeling fulfilled. And so I can look at other people and go, yes, but I'm not comparing my voice to anybody else. I'm not comparing my range to anybody else. I'm not comparing my songwriting to anybody else. I am competitive with myself. I'm just like,
Perfect.
How can I get better? Like, okay, that song was a little wordy. I need to, or whatever. Yeah. And so I'm constantly trying to better myself. And I spent a number of years, the past 4 years, just performing, gigging. I did that to learn. Yeah. I learned in the public eye. It wasn't like I went underground for a few years, learned how to perform on stage, and then I'm like, here I am in this great stage show. I just all right, I'm going to do this. And I just picked up my guitar and I would start going around town.
And that's how all the great artists have done it. I mean, the Beatles went to Hamburg and they worked it out. And then so you get better by doing.
By doing it, yes. And so I learned how to perform by performing. I learned, and I have to tell you, all the, and everything was interwoven. So as I was building Kathryn the Grape, I'm learning Kathryn Cloward music, and I'm doing all this other work out here, but this is what the public was seeing. Yeah. And, but playing at any venue I possibly could play at for my Kathryn Cloward music, starting out at open mics and then, working my way up, playing at the Belly Up, and having a band and everything. I learned how to do that. I learned, I had to learn how to do all these things. But when I first came out, I realized, I need to learn more. I'm not ready to do some of these shows. And so I just knuckled down and we just rehearsed, get out, rehearse. And I always say, all of that helps me with Kathryn the Grape shows, because I'll tell you what, children will let you know if they don't like you right away. Because there's no, if you're out, you could, you and I could be talking, having a drink, they're playing. The band doesn't necessarily know if you're in them or not. We're just all here. Kids are like, what else do you have? They will let you know. They'll be like, what other songs are you going to sing? Yeah. I don't like this one. What else do you have? They'll tell you. Yeah. I mean, not maybe that blatantly, but
close.
So I was if you can hold the attention of children for 20 or 30 minutes, rock star level, because
totally.
They will let you know. And so, and I just love it. I love getting out. So I love performing. It's a really fun aspect of my creative process and what I get to do. And so I perform, Kathryn the Grape is an illustrated character, but I come to life for children by being present. I wear my Kathryn the Grape, I wear all purple and I am Kathryn the Grape.
Yeah, so you're just you being you.
Yes. Yeah. So, I walk into it's really fun. I walk into the room now and kids are like, Kathryn the Grape is here. And I'm like, that's me, And so you can see, I just get so happy. I just love it. And so it's truly the inner inner me coming out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so that's an exciting thing. And so, and then on this other side, I make sure that, on the business side of things, that we're always looking at new ways of getting it out there into this market. I mean, it's an independent world now. We don't, it's not necessarily, there's only a certain people who are controlling the whole monopoly. We have an opportunity to be able to get media out into the world and not be under somebody else's kind of restrictions of the message. Fabulous.
This is great. That's a really good transition point. But I was still thinking, when you were concluding that about Kathryn the Grape and Kathryn Cloward, the performer, I was thinking of the Kathryn that was 7 years old standing in front of her mirror, performing, giving a speech in your home. And now it's all come to life. Yes.
Thank you. And that vision, I used to just put on shows for my dolls. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that vision, I of course put in my book. When I was explaining to children in one of the Kathryn the Grape books about what does it feel like to burst with excitement, and to the whole singer-songwriter thing is very much a part of the Kathryn the Grape story, because that's part of my story.
Yeah.
But it's illustrated. There she is in her room singing to her dolls, because that was my reality. Mm-hmm. So, but yes, I think that there's, for adults, that's the energy that we need to connect to for ourselves. Is what did it feel like when you were a child and you were riding your bike in your neighborhood? Or what did it feel like when you were doing that thing that you felt so free doing for hours and hours and hours? That feeling, the feeling is what we need to connect back to. And we as adults can experience that in a number of different ways. That freedom of our spirit doing what we love to do. And we talk going back to life is busy. We have responsibilities, right? There's electricity that needs to get turned on, gas needs to go in the car, phones need to get paid for. So we have responsibilities as adults. But we also have a responsibility to ourselves to make sure that we are feeding all the parts of who we are to have a full life. And part of that is the joyfulness of life, of being ourselves. And that also is the connecting back to that energy and the spirit of who we were as children.
See, your mind is like a matrix, and it's all connected.
It is.
It's true, because we tend to compartmentalize a lot of parts of our life. Mm-hmm. This goes back to the whole thing, like men's brains are like waffles and women's are like spaghetti.
I just saw that the other day somewhere.
But really, it's a combination of the two, because all those little waffle zones, they kind of mix with each other. And when I found that when I can blend those different groups of categories of my life, that's when special things happen.
Yes.
Right? Because we end up bringing our personal self into our business, or, we merge different essences of ourselves, and then we become truly magical.
Absolutely.
Isn't it great?
Absolutely. And we need all of us. We need to be, I was raised very female empowered. And what I mean by that is my mom was very much instilled in me, kind of wanted me to have all the opportunities she didn't have. And so I was very hear me, I'm roar, right? But God gifted me with a son. And so here I am seeing life through a little boy's eyes in a way that I didn't see it as a child, because I was always looking up to the boys, right? I was always wanting to prove that I could do anything they could do, right? So now I'm looking through the eyes of a little boy in the heart of my heart, just in a time where some of those things that I felt years ago are kind of the message that's out there. And I'm going, gosh, we really need to be mindful of the messages we're putting out there.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Because my son could never wear a shirt that says boys rule, boys are the future, right?
Yeah.
And I'm all about empowering everybody. So we need our men to feel that they have a voice just as much as our women need to have a voice. Mm-hmm. Our boys need to have a voice just as much as our girls. How are we going to change anything if we're so adamant about pushing our girls forward? It needs to be together. We can't have our boys going mute that they feel like they can't have a voice if we're really pushing our girls. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
It's a major thing for me right now because I'm watching it. And also because my son put voice to it like 5 years ago when he was younger. He's like, I wrote a whole piece about it, but he asked me one day, Mama, do you think adults talk differently to little boys than they do to little girls? And I was like, well, what do you mean with their tone? And he said, yeah, like sometimes they speak sweetly to little girls and they speak harsh, like mean to boys or whatever. I can't remember the word he used. And what an interesting thing for a child to say, to observe, right? And fortunately, my son has had so many wonderful male teachers. Like and so he's, and I'm only saying this, like he's been able to be immersed in the education system with female teachers, male teachers. He's got this mom who's like kind of living a really untraditional life. But this matters to me. That's why Kathryn the Grape isn't just for little girls. A few years ago, somebody was like, well, you should really just be marketing Kathryn the Grape to little girls. Like, you need to really focus on little girls. And I was like, I will never do that. I will never, because she's for everybody. And little boys can be inspired by little girl characters. Like, there doesn't have to be, like, that would just cut off half the population. Why would I ever do that?
Right.
And ironically enough, a lot of little boys love Kathryn the Grape. So I'm like, see?
Right.
So I'm just really passionate about us being more mindful about the way that we share things, right? Like the other day on Facebook, so now you're getting me on a soapbox. It's really, I'm passionate about.
This is good.
The other day on Facebook, I saw one of those memes that go out. Because, I'm on there, like marketing and stuff, and I'm on there. And there was this post that kind of got reshared a little bit that was like, and I'm just going to say it. So there was this post that says, when you're raising your son, remember you're raising somebody's husband, somebody's, it was kind of went through these roles of like, so
the father, the boss.
Well, they were saying like the father, the husband, make sure you raise him well. And I was like, and so of course people were like, I know, right? But then I saw it from a different vantage point. I was like, if we put anything out that said, remember you're raising your daughter to be someone's wife, someone's mother, like,
yeah,
women would lose it. And quite frankly, I would have lost it years ago.
Yeah.
Okay? And so why I bring light to that is our men need, I don't know, it's interesting how I've shifted. I've kind of equalized here.
Yeah, that's okay.
But we have to be very aware of the message that we're putting out, because if women want to have an equal voice, we can't swing all the way over here and only expect our men to be a certain way and our boys to get in line. It has to be mindfully balanced. So instead, hey, you're raising your child to be someone's parent, someone's partner,
right,
someone's boss.
Yeah.
Let's equalize the message. And so if we don't want the divide 20 years down the line, the message has to start equal with our children. Hence, why I do what I do too.
Right on. I mean, because what you're trying to do.
I'm passionate about this subject.
You are, and I love this because you don't want to just lift up girls. Right. You want to lift up everybody. Yes. Right. And that's that's a great message.
Yes.
Because the things that those forgive me, the 7-book series, the affirmations, that was the word. Those are timeless principles that apply to everybody.
Yes.
It's not just a exclusively one gender message. So I stick to it. Stick to your integrity,
and I want that love for everybody.
Yeah.
And I can say this with transparency because in my younger years, I was very successful very early, and I was married, and I know my husband. You can have hindsight 2020, right? But there was a time when we were, we both kind of, we're obviously not married anymore. We co-parent our son very well. But when he one time said something to me that still sticks with me, he said, Kathryn, I just always felt like I was a few steps behind you, right? And I'm sure there were many ways that I didn't help him feel manly in the home. Meaning, I didn't honor his role in the same ways that I didn't feel like my role was being honored in a way that I wasn't such a traditional woman. I was, and And I think a lot of my female empowerment stuff, because he's known me, my ex-husband has known me since I was in junior high, and he'll tell you, one of the first things he ever heard me say was like, no man's going to ever control me. Like, that's how I used to, that comes from like some deep-rooted stuff we don't have to get into. But that's how I was, right? And so that is really how life, that's how I was, like how I felt. Now, mind you, I am a very soft, passionate, like tender woman, but I also, some of the stuff that I've been through made me be a really fierce warrior too.
Yeah, right on.
And so I bring this to light because I can look back at a period of my life and go, in what ways was my need to be so empowered that I made him feel like he didn't have a voice? Now, I don't have to go over what I needed from him. That's not this. Would never put energy on that. I can only improve myself. So now, when I find myself, I choose to. I'm aware of that about myself, and I want to make sure that other women, perhaps, are making sure that their need to be super empowered with their partner, that their partner feels they have a voice too. Whether that partner is male or female,
But if they're partners, right? Then, it's kind of a co-equal kind of situation, right?
Right.
Where there's mutual love, mutual respect, mutual empowerment.
Yes.
Right?
That is the beautiful joy of partnership for sure.
Yeah. The old traditional roles. I mean, yeah, we're evolving as a society.
We are. And I know so many amazing men who are at home raising the children as the women are out working, and and vice versa. So every family unit, whatever works for your family,
right? What
a beautiful thing, right?
Not everybody is the Leave It to Beaver family, right?
No, and plenty of households who grandparents more and more are involved. What a beautiful thing!
Yeah, it's a great thing.
It's important.
Well, it used to be like that, 100, 150 years ago. We had 3 generations in the home.
Yes.
So,
and that's important too.
It is.
That we take care of our aging community, of our parents. That that somewhere we got sold this message that success comes in everybody living their own little boxes, right? But then we've got an elderly community who's lonely.
Yeah.
And as we're chasing so many things, we're leaving some people out. And what a beautiful thing to bring that community, that tribal. We talk about our tribe. I hear lots of people say, like, this is my tribe. But that should also make sure we're including our parents and our grandparents part of that tribe too.
Yeah.
Because they raised us.
That's right.
Yeah.
They're part of what made us who we are.
Absolutely.
This is unbelievable. And like I told you, like when I saw all your stuff, I was like, there's a million ways we can go. Can we shift gears a little?
Sure.
Is that all right? And let's talk about your role as an entrepreneur, as a business person. And, we touched on a little bit of it already, but you've got a great story to tell there too. I mean, you had built a multi-million-dollar company, and, like all of us, we went through our challenges during the Great Recession, and you've transformed your business into something else. I'd love to hear that story.
Sure.
Because I think this could be a fun one.
Yes. Okay. Well, I guess I kind of need to go back to when I started college. My parents, they didn't have money to send us to college. We knew that. We always knew that. It was like just kind of like what it was. And I'm the youngest child, so I observed how everybody else did it. And but I also knew that getting a college education was important for me. So I went to Grossmont College, a community college, for 2 years, and then I went over to SDSU. I graduated from San Diego State. I paid for my own college by waiting tables.
Wow.
And I also lived at home quite a bit of that. I lived out on my own, had fun, and I was like, Mom, Dad, I gotta come back. But I always had a really great relationship with my parents because my experience of home often was just my parents and I, me. My oldest brother, his experience of home was everybody at home. But my greater experience was just, my parents and me.
Because you were the youngest.
I was the youngest, so I was there the longest. So why I bring that up is that I made different choices instead of going like, there was a part in my life where I was like, well, I don't want to have any debt with college and I can live at home and I can work. So I graduated without any debt, which was
That's
really.
awesome. I was just talking to my daughter about that. I'm like, some people with 6 figures of debt right now,
Yes.
and people are burdened.
Yes.
But there's a smart way to go about it if you have a strategy, right?
Yes.
And you did. You had a strategy.
Yeah, and I had a great home life. I got along with my parents really well, so it wasn't like, some people are like, I got to get out, or they feel like they have to get out. I didn't feel that way. But during that time, I think I shared this with you a little bit, but during that time, when I was 18 years old, my first semester in college, I'm like, I got my own schedule. I can do whatever I want. I'm waitressing on the weekends, making bank.
Yeah.
And my dad got laid off from his job.
Oh.
And so my parents don't have a college education. My dad raised our whole family on in an insurance underwriter salary.
Yeah.
And he got laid off. He was kind of like aged out, I guess you could say.
Yeah. The corporate world can be brutal.
Right.
Yeah.
So I observed my dad for about 9 months of his life. He was out of work. And and so that was also during the time where the 24-hour news cycle was just starting and the Waco David Koresh thing was going on. Do you remember that? So
that was in the 90s.
It was. I'm just basically telling you my age right now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I shouldn't have used the number.
Like, no. I mean, you could Google it.
Yeah.
Right? So this was the fall of 92. Okay, so I was 18. So I'm 45. So I don't have any. I'm happy to say my age. I'll just say it. So anyways, and so why this is an important story to share is that I watched my dad. He wasn't like a Eeyore, super depressed or anything, but I watched my dad really kind of, he just watched news all day long. He was very aware of what was going on in the news,
Yeah.
But I watched him in that time, and I remember seeing his vitality kind of, lower. He was clearly depressed on some level, but he was still like, hey, but why this was important for me to observe is because at a very early age, I saw that at any given time, a company can say, check you later.
That's right.
And I don't know why I just did that snapping thing.
It was cool. Hey, it works.
But this was an interesting thing for me to watch. And I was like, I never want to be that. I never want to have somebody else. I think was where the entrepreneurial thing came into me, was that I want to have more, I want to make sure that I have the skills to keep myself afloat. I don't know how to, any other way than that.
No, yeah, I get it.
But also when I was younger, now segue back here, when we were younger, we didn't have extra money. Like if there was something we wanted to do, we'd work for it. And so as I shared, my parents were, because everything connects, right?
Yeah.
So my parents were very involved in Boy Scouting with Father Joe. Father Joe's, he's very known in San Diego for homelessness and helping the homeless.
Yeah.
But what I'm sharing a lot of in my book with him is that his heart is for the youth. That's what a lot of people don't necessarily know, is that so much of his priesthood and his life, it has been with youth groups and the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
He was a Boy Scout himself. And so anyways, so if my brothers were going to go on these trips for the Boy Scouts and my dad, we needed to earn the money. So we would do these hot dog and Pepsi stands outside of, like, there used to be a Sears in Hillcrest, right? And so we'd do these hot dog and Pepsi stands. This is long before Price Club was doing their food court thing, right? And so this was Father Joe's brainchild. And so that's how we earned the money to go on these trips, my brothers. So, and I wasn't going on the trip, but I was there helping my family, right?
Okay.
And so I learned from a very early age, if you want to do something, you've got to earn it. Okay? Or you want something, you have to earn it. It wasn't like, my parents never spent money on a credit card. If my mom, to this day, she probably would still do it if it was a thing, like she had money in envelopes. Like, this is all I have to spend on food and whatnot. So,
good discipline right there. I like that.
Very disciplined. Yeah. But my point of telling that story is that kind of like from this early age of, we've got to earn it. And then I watched my dad, and then he laid off. And then he eventually did get this wonderful job at Golden Eagle Insurance through a friend, and he retired from them years later. And so that's why I always loved waitressing, well, I think they call it food serving now, was because I could pick up a shift and make more money. So I always felt like waitressing was such an entrepreneurial thing for me to do because I also, it wasn't that somebody was paying me an hour. All I was going to get was this hourly pay. I learned that, hey, if I do a great job, if I keep their water filled, if I'm attentive, I'm friendly, I make more money on tips possibly.
Yeah.
Right. And so I got really good at that job. And I love it. I always I would do that any day. I loved that job. And that's how I learned how to talk to people and interact.
Yeah.
And so when I started my career out of college, I went and worked at Club Med and I performed, and that was super fun, and lived in New Zealand for a year. And then I finally was like,
cool.
hey, I got to get my career going.
Yeah.
But the choice that I made was my first career job was working on 100% commission for a corporate sales recruiting firm. And I loved the uncapped, unlimited potential of it. And mind you, you could make this or you could make this. And there's these sales awards on the wall that I was seeing all these other people were achieving. I was like, well, somebody's figuring it out. I'm going to do that too. And that's what I did. And so I just put my head down. And that's when a lot of the mindset stuff started really sinking in for me. My dad had given me the book, The Power of Positive Thinking, when I was, when that time, when he was going through that when I was 18. And so this concept of wow, my thoughts really do greatly contribute to how I organize myself on this planet and in my life. Right? Huge. And I learned that very early. And so sales was really at the end of the day is just finding a solution for somebody.
It's a consultant. You're helping them out, right?
Yep. And it's a relationship, No one's going to do business with you if they don't like you. And so I learned that business, and it took me a long time to ramp up to make my first commission check, a long time. I worked for 9 months before I made my first commission check, and I'd waitress on the weekends to pay my bills. And it was called a draw versus commission. Do you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So when I would explain to my friends, I'd be like, wait, so if you don't make your commission, you owe the company money? I was like,
yeah. They're kind of fronting you future commissions.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, quite frankly, is exactly how the music business works when you get signed to a label. So I get this part of the business, right? I get that. That's why I'm like, I don't want to do that with them. So anyways, so this concept of, hey, if I just figure out this business, I can be successful at it. And I eventually did figure that out. And I learned how, we cold called, and we had no warm leads, right? So we were the kind of tester office. We were the last place office. They just kind of put us in place to go, but we're not going to give you any of the warm leads that everybody else has. You guys just have to figure it out. So we had to figure it out by cold calling.
This is like Glengarry Glen Ross. Here we go.
Seriously, so it was and here's the better part. Here's the really great part, John. And this office, we shared an office. Let's imagine behind this curtain, there's another office. So here's my office. We were the last place team. We had no warm leads. We were getting no sales. Okay? But we were rah-rah every day learning this. But that office over there was the #1 branch in the entire company. So they were throwing up sales every day. And we were just we weren't getting it, right? But I was like, if they're doing it, but in my mind, I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, good for you.
And so there was this why are we, how can we get this? How can I get this? And eventually all the pieces, the cog in the wheel just clicked, and it just started going for me.
Nice.
And I had a great first sales manager. I'm still good friends with her. Her name's Jennifer Pinert, and she believed in me. And I can't tell you, in different parts of my life, I've had that one person who's believed in me. And that is massive for anybody, to have somebody behind you going, you can do this. I see your potential. I know you can do this. Her belief in me, just like I can name a bunch of other people through the last few decades who've believed in me, that's just I can do this. And I eventually was very successful with that. And I bought my first house when I was 26 years old, and I was really proud of that.
That's unbelievable. Yeah,
that was in San Diego, where you could buy a house for $280,000 at that time, right? 4-bedroom, 2-bath, a pool. But the thing was, but it was weird because a lot of my friends weren't. It was just a weird thing because nobody else was buying houses at that time, and whatever. I was just, I just focused on work, and but I eventually didn't like having people being my product. And so I went and worked for one of my clients who was a food marketing company, which is how I know Jennifer Klein.
Aha. Okay. Yeah.
See everything connect.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Klein and I worked at the same food, and they were my client. I had cold called into that company. It was a food marketing company. I cold called into them, and my very first client the very first prospect that I ever said no to, Tracy Kamada, she was the VP of sales. She said, I pitched her, and she goes, okay, well, because they had a VP of sales, they had a sales manager position they were looking to fill. So I cold called her, and she said, are you negotiable on your fee? And the first time I ever said, no, I'm not. She said, all right, I want to see you. I got the meeting because I said no, I would not negotiate with her.
Because you had integrity.
Right. So I went, she wanted to hire me.
Yeah.
So she's like, I need salespeople like you, Kathryn. I was like, no, I'm not interested, because my career was rising. Yeah. Well, sure enough, they became my client, closed a lot of deals with them. And then a few years later, when I was looking relationships, everything. So a few years later, when I was like, I want to get out of the recruiting business, I went and worked there. But Tracy didn't have any openings in her division, which is where Jennifer was. I went and worked for the nonprofit division. And so I worked with nonprofit agencies, their food agencies, like food, all the, now it's called, was Harvest America at the time, all the food banks and whatnot, and all the feeding programs that, and I say feeding like, food boxes where you take them home. Now it's actually a thing a lot of people do.
Right.
I bring light to this because during that time, and then I eventually, and I grew that division quite well. Again, I had to learn another segment, but I knew how to cold call. So I would just cold call, and I would just call clients. I had this one client, his name's Bill Askins. He was my customer, and he never bought from me for like 8-9 months, maybe a little bit less, 6 or 7 months. But John, I called him almost every day pitching him on product. And he was this lovely man from Alabama, and he and I just became friendly. Because he was just so nice to me. He wouldn't hang up the phone. He's like, here she is again, calling again, And so, and then when he had a deal for me, when he's like, I need this, this is what I need from you. Can you make this happen? And we got our first deal. Then poof, blew up.
Yeah.
And it started from there. And so, but what happened for me was eventually I worked for them for 3 years. We grew this major client. And then they started cutting commissions. So the next year they cut commissions. And you don't take, from high producing sales reps, you don't like cut commissions.
No, not at all.
Like that's like the most demotivating thing ever. So this really bothered me, and Bill had been saying, you should go out on your own, So there were some other things happening in the company, so I was like, I'm going out on my own. And so I started my own food company in January, 2005, and I borrowed $10,000 from my own savings account and that I had earned, and I seeded my company with that. And then I was in direct competition with my previous company, every person I called, every client I called, because I was only selling at that time. Now I'm doing both. I'm buying and selling. So I'm doing all aspects and logistics. But any client I had or that I had previously, I said, I just want the opportunity to still be able to pitch you product. If I can't provide you anything, then you're not going to buy from me, right? And so anyways, I put my head down, and I had some prospects that I could fill. And so slowly I grew that, and Bill helped me. He helped me grow that company. He had his own company, I had my own company, but for the first few deals that I needed more equity, I needed more capital than I had in my, my little $10,000 account.
Yeah, it was shoestring.
So Bill funded my first number of deals until I grew, and and we would share deals. So
he would give you cash up front for big orders, so that you can go and buy the product.
Yeah. So I would. So for example, let's say I would find the product, and a lot of deals he and I did. So he would it might be his client, like he would sell to the client, and I would get the product, and then he and I would split a deal 50-50. And this is such a big thing. We did millions of dollars of business together and never had a contract ever. We just did lady and gentleman agreement. We trusted each other, and I'd proven to him that I was trustworthy. And I hunted for the business. I'm a great cold caller, so I would just hunt. And so I'd bring the business in. We'd know what we'd need to buy it for. So then I would buy it, we'd ship it and sell it, and so we were selling, massive amounts of food. And it was really great. And then, as you kind of alluded to, and this was all a very interesting time because my company was doing, I was a solopreneur doing multi-million dollars worth of sales every year. It was just, and I loved it. But, as the 2008, recession hit.
Yeah, that was brutal.
My segment was nonprofit agencies. So when there's a recession, what's one thing that goes out of everyone's budget?
Yeah, charity.
They're not donating, right? So I had some clients that were slowly going under. And as a solopreneur, somebody sticking, a $27,000 invoice on my company isn't like some XYZ company. It's like, that's my son's potential college money.
Yeah, exactly.
So there was just kind of this ripple effect that was happening with all of that.
Yes.
And at the same time, this massive client we had that I did a lot of business with, Bill, they were a well-known Christian organization that unfortunately, that at the core of their business was this beautiful thing, but they had grown so big that unfortunately they were making some decisions that weren't legal. And I mean, it's all over the news.
Yeah.
And so, but there came a point they thought they were above it. And eventually I was like, I got to get out of this. I can't be a part of this. And Bill knew too. And so this client, why I say that is, it was like all the powers that be were kind of showing me, this isn't for you anymore, Kathryn. But I didn't know what else to do because, there was I had a lot of responsibilities, and at the same time, there was just a lot happening. And so I had 3 clients all go under within this kind of 9-month period. I had to pull out of working with them. So my income with that just plummeted. And I had to close the company. Pretty dramatic. I had to close it. And that was a challenge for me because here's the deal is I felt like a failure in ways because I didn't keep it going. And one of my friends was like, Kathryn, but you grew this to be incredible. And then instead of sticking in there and waiting until they actually got, I pulled out at an appropriate time. But I had to bankrupt that company, and ironically enough, because at that time, I had about $40,000. This person left me with 27. There was, a lawyer's fee that I had to pay. This client was going out at 17. This person was, all of a sudden, everybody was just sticking me with these bills.
Yeah.
And I remember something my business attorney had said. This is the first time I've ever shared this story. This is what my business attorney had said to me years before when I was setting up an S Corp. She said, Kathryn, Donald Trump. He literally used this example. He goes, Donald Trump, all of his companies, he doesn't, he borrows other people's money and then it's not his own personal finances. That's why you need to have an S Corp so that it's not like, if your client ever sticks you, the vendor can't come after your own resources. Mm-hmm. Well, thank goodness, when all these companies were going under and sticking me with, basically getting their product and then not paying and then saying they don't have money.
Right.
But then one of them opened up 6 months later with a different name. Yeah. Right. So, but I remember I sat in a lawyer's office and I was bawling. I was like, I was just really broken up about this. But here's the solution, a legal solution that was for me. And so he had all my numbers, right? All my banking. And he says, Kathryn, and I was crying. And he goes, Kathryn, I can see that this is really a big deal for you.
Yeah.
And he goes, but you're talking about like $40,000 that you're writing off here. It's not really anything. He goes, companies go under with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is but I'm sure you're never going to be here again. And I said, I never will. And he goes, and you didn't, this wasn't your decisions that made this happen.
No.
And so he gave me this little count. But why I bring this story to light now is because there were a number of years where I couldn't share that because I still carried around it ended in not such a great way. But you know what? It needed to end. It probably needed to end. I was holding on into 2010, right? I should have probably been like, I'm out, a while before. But the redemption of this story is that I didn't stop being an entrepreneur. at that time, I was deciding that's when Kathryn the Grape was coming to life. And so I took these kind of seeds of my experience and put them over here. And now with my creativity and my business experience, I'm doing a whole different, I'm no longer selling somebody else's product. I'm no longer representing somebody else's service. I have created a media company on the backbone of my own creativity, and I help other people share theirs too. So the redemption of and I don't know if redemption's the right word, but that I picked myself up and went back. Carried on, and it's been the most beautiful revelation of my true character and my true essence. So often we do need things to crumble so that we could rise back up, which is ultimately my Phoenix Rising song, right? It has to get burned down. And then from that same energy, we rise up in a beautiful, glorious light.
We have to break down before we break through.
That's right. Here we are.
Yeah, but that was such a tough time, and things happened that weren't within your control. I mean, and a lot of people suffered. I went through difficult moments as well. But imagine if that recession didn't happen and you were continuing to build that company, and that would have been wonderful, but you never would have been who you are now.
Right.
If it wasn't for that.
Right.
So I know when you go through and you build a company, it's your baby. It's personal.
Yeah.
But I'm just so happy that you've come out of this so successfully. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And I had to literally rebuild. And
yeah.
And I always want to encourage people. So anybody listening, that giving yourself time, you can't, like I always use the garden metaphor, when you're planting seeds, you got to cultivate that ground. You've got to, tend to the soil. So, we see in the parks these big oak trees, but they had to be a seed at first.
Oh, yeah.
And it took time to grow.
Yes.
And we're like that, that for us to grow into the harvest of our lives, we often sometimes, branches need to be cut down. We might even need to, get cut down. And so, that we have everything we need. We just have to believe in ourselves and be willing to put the time and the work in. And so all that experience led me to go, I want to keep going. And even in the past decade, I've had some real interesting things happen where I'm like, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going, I'm going to keep going. And I also know at any given time I can go work for somebody else.
Yeah, you could always do that.
Right. And so a few years back, every time I'd have these breakdowns, this is what would happen. Let me give you my pattern. I would have these breakdowns and I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. I mean, it'd be like a complete throw it all out. Like, I'm not doing any of this anymore. I can't do this. I don't want to be this vulnerable. I can't do this. It was everything. I was like, I'm going to go, like, I don't know what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go, like, it was like a complete, and then, all right.
Right.
And I'm being vulnerable, just sharing that because, like, yes, like we all have those moments of extreme self-doubt
all the time.
So for me, my breakdown usually was everything, and then I was like, all right, I'm back. I just needed to pull myself together a little bit. I might need to go to Sedona, go to the beach, talk to a friend.
Right. Yeah. It's all part of that therapeutic process.
Right.
You kind of work your way through it. That is amazing. So now you're an author. We've talked about that. We talked about you're as a musician, and you kind of have sort of two parallel tracks going there. So what are the other things, the other projects you're working on?
Right. Well, within that music space, within that space, my company owns all the media of that. So obviously, the music business isn't. The greater depth is what you can do with that artistry that isn't necessarily performing, right? The performing part of it is just one aspect. So we're working on a lot of licensing stuff right now, taking Kathryn the Grape to the next level. We're looking at pitching for some shows right now. I absolutely believe Kathryn the Grape is going to be, a television show sooner than later. Very much like kind of that like Sesame Street meets, Mr. Rogers. So there's a plan for Kathryn the Grape. I also work with other artists. So I have other artists like Jennifer Klein, who, where there's other independent artists that have a similar message to mine. I have to obviously stay within my heart-centered media, and that Jennifer Klein's a businesswoman herself, and so our energy aligns, and so I help. I know how to market and know how to get it out there, and we've been very successful with her this year on the label. She's played at venues she hadn't played at before. I'm a voting member of the Academy, the Academy Awards, the Grammys, and that also allows me to submit. I was able to get her onto the ballot. Onto the first round ballot of the Grammys,
right on.
Just like I was able to get a song that we produced last year. I'm in the process right now. There's a young girl by the name of Michelle Hopkins. She's 15 years old.
Wow. She
has MPS, which is a rare disease. It's an incurable rare disease. And through a friend, I was introduced to Michelle's family. And last year, I did some work with the National MPS Society, and I wrote a song called Heroes, the core of that song, and then my band came in and helped write the layers of the music for. And that song's purpose is to help raise awareness and support for National MPS Society, and we've done a lot of work with getting that message out. And Michelle's performed with us, and when I met Michelle, she lives in Long Beach, but when I met Michelle, I asked her if she wanted to sing lead on the song. That wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
I just was like, do you want to sing lead? And she's like, yeah. And so she sang lead on the song. We shot a music video. Her parents helped out with that. And so we've been able to have this visual display of this super empowered young girl just being like, I'm a hero and I'm here to help be an advocate for MPS and for rare diseases. And so I just, and I'm helping her build that platform in cooperation with her parents. So Michelle's on my label now too. I just wrote an album of songs.
So you have your own label?
Yeah. Yep.
I missed that earlier. This is awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so Kandon Unlimited is basically, my company's Kandon Unlimited. Kandon is Kathryn and Landon. That's my son's name. So Kathryn. So it's all purples, Kathryn, and then the heart in the center is red because my son has red hair. And so my crimson heart is what I've always called him. So when you see the red heart on everything I do. But yeah, so it's an indie label. So I have the publishing aspect of everything I do, which is the book publishing and the book and the music publishing. And then also the label is the production side of all of the music. And so all of that's under my umbrella company, which is Kandon Unlimited. And so I'm doing it for myself. I might as well do it for other people. And so
this is awesome. No,
I'm figuring out the music business while I'm actively in it. So we're not anywhere that the difference is these massive labels have, and just like the massive book publishing arms, they have more marketing research.
Yeah, of course.
Reach, right? Because they're more established. But they're not any place that we're not able to be. We're there. And so the difference is that we own our media. And so that gives us the opportunity for if the day comes that we can negotiate, we negotiate for our own media. I don't have somebody in between me. I don't need somebody else to represent something that I created. Right. Not at this point. Right. So I don't want to sell out. So even with Kathryn the Grape books, they're all published under my own company. I independently published them because I didn't want to give the rights to Kathryn the Grape to somebody else. Right. Somebody would have kicked her to the curb 9 years ago. Yeah. And that was a piece of advice somebody gave me. Kathryn, you should do this on your own. And once I researched it, I was like, yeah, because my vision for Kathryn the Grape has always been expansive. And so I wouldn't have had the sales. I wouldn't have had any publisher would have said, see you later. Yeah. And we own her. So we're going to do something different with her. Right. And so my brain thinks in the expansiveness of it. And so, we figured out we're figuring out the music industry and we're in it. We're in it. We're voting members of the Academy. We're getting on the ballot. And so we're playing, and I'm not looking to grow this, hey, let's get everybody we can. I just want to dig in deep with people that work with me, and we're doing really great things. And my purpose, again, is about the message. Just like, you met Jennifer Klein. She has a really beautiful message of love and community to share with the world.
Yes, she does.
And I know her. I met her all those years ago. We were working together, and she is a hardworking woman. She's very much like me, and in some ways, like, we both can be misunderstood, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so I see her, and she sees me. So who else would you want to work? There's nobody else I'd want to work with so dearly. And so the same thing with Michelle. I get her. Mm-hmm. She gets me. So we work together. And I love her parents, and they, and so everything that we do is about helping share messages and building platforms. And so I believe wholeheartedly that Kathryn the Grape is going to be a worldwide household name one day. I wholeheartedly want Jennifer's music to be out in the world, just like I want my music to be out in the world in the hands and hearts of other people. And we're doing everything in our power to do that with the highest level of integrity.
This is just unbelievable. This is so great. But I was just reflecting on the challenge that your father went through when he was laid off. Mm-hmm. And you said you didn't ever want to be in that position. Mm-hmm. So I would imagine that's one of the reasons why you wanted to own the rights to Kathryn the Grape, because you didn't want someone else, like you say, kicking her to the curb. You wanted to be in control of your own destiny to the greatest possible extent you could. Right.
Yes, and to back up, that isn't how I got into it at first. I didn't have that wisdom until I actually got into the business.
You
and what I mean by that,
figuring it out as you go.
Yes, and so. And that's what I often teach people or try to instill in people is often people want to go I want to know, okay, what's the system? How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And they want to know step by step by step by step. But I'm always get on the road, right? Just start.
Yeah.
Because it'll reveal itself as you go.
Yes, that's very true.
So in the beginning, when I first got into the publishing, I of course was looking for a publisher. I was like, and nobody wants. And here's the thing. This is the truth. Nobody really wants to do children's books because they're expensive. They're very expensive. They're full color. They're not black and white. They're expensive.
Yeah.
Or they're more expensive, I should say. Or they cost more. And so I was just, of course, doing what I do, hunting down information. And I was at a women's conference. Yay for conferences that help each other. So this happens to be all women at this particular conference. And the keynote speaker, she had just published a book. And I was a session speaker at this one. So I had met her behind the scenes. And I said, hey, can I ask you? And so I did what all aspiring writers do. How did you get published?
Yeah.
She said that she worked with an independent publishing company, and she said, Kathryn, you're a businesswoman. Why wouldn't you publish on your own, independently? And I was like, I don't even. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
Right.
And she said, no one's going to and she said to me, I'll never forget, her name was Maria Bailey. She said, no one's ever going to market your book better than you are.
That's
and I was
right.
Okay, but whatever. And so I banked that piece of advice in my brain while I kind of started looking. And as I figured, and I sent out a few query letters, 6. That's nothing, and I got one no back. And I pulled that piece of advice out of the back of my memory. And I was like, what's up with this independent publishing? And I looked into it. And I was like, I'm going to start my own publishing company because I didn't want anybody else to have the rights.
Yeah.
And here's another story that came at that same time, and I want to share this because people need to know this part too, is I had a friend named Renee. She's no longer with us. She passed last year, but she was this beautiful friend in my life. And she was a writer. She'd written this book with a major publishing company, and she was sharing her story. That was a pretty interesting story. And they did the traditional stuff. They gave her an advance, right? And so she wrote this book for them, and it's a beautiful book. And a few years down the line, I don't know how many years down the line it was, but they came to her and said, okay, well, we're not going to print your book anymore. And so you can buy the books that are in inventory from us for whatever it was. I think it was 78 cents or something. It was a paperback book. And so she wanted to buy those copies back so she could, give them out to people. But because of the contract she had with them, she could never republish that book. And ebooks weren't a thing at that time. So they had all the rights that they wanted to do whatever they wanted with that book.
Wow.
Right? So that, and I may not have all the logistics, as it turned out for her, but the point being is that she had I probably would have fought to get the rights back for myself, but I don't know what they did. But when she gave me that piece of information, I was like, oh no, which is why I say somebody could have just taken Kathryn the Grape. So when I'm speaking to people, I love it when people go, oh, you just self-published? And I was like, well, I don't think you really even understand what that just word is. Like I run a publishing company. We've got, this year alone, we'll have put out 40 books. And what I mean by that is we've got 7 Kathryn the Grape books, 7 ebooks. We've got 7 black and white Kathryn the Grape affirmation books. And so right there, we've got 21 ISBNs going on. And then we just released 8 Let's Read Together books, plus 8 ebooks, plus each of these 7 were made into a complete book. So we've got a lot happening.
Yeah, of course.
So there's no just in that.
No, not at all.
Right? And so, but I have a woman that I know, she's wanting to publish a book, and she reached out to me and she's like, Kathryn, what do you think about this and this and this? And I said, well, what's your goal? Because she was asking about publishing. And I said, well, what's your long-term goal with what you're doing? Because the decision you're going to make right now really is kind of like, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line? And so often that's the thing is for people when I say, just get on the road. And you may have that goal way down there. But so many beautiful things are going to open up as you get on the road.
And you may not even know what your goal is yet.
Yeah.
And then once you get on the road, like you say, it reveals itself.
It does. And so I'm always just like, my dad used to say this to me. I obviously used to have this breakdown before breakthrough thing a lot. Because it just came to me. He's probably like, hey, let me give you this piece of advice, Kevin. I used to stall. I used to freeze when a major decision needed to get made. And I was
do
scared.
That all the time. Yeah.
Okay. And then I would do this waffling thing. Okay. And my dad said to me, he used to say, Kathryn, you need to make a decision to make a decision. Right. So I'd be like, right. This is me before. And so I love that. You just need to make a decision to make a decision. So, and that's part of the okay, I'm going to get on the road. Now I'm going to start walking. I'm going to start seeing what's there. So you're right. If you would have told me a decade ago when I filed for my, Kandon Unlimited, state business filing, right, in January 2010, if you would have said, hey, Kathryn, in 10 years, you're going to put all your music under there, you're going to have albums out, you're going to do all this stuff, I'd be like, what? And so, you have this magical power inside of me, it's inside of you, it's inside of all of us to manifest what we desire for the good of the world. And I fully believe wholeheartedly that all the powers of the universe, God, everything comes in and supports the goodness that we want to share in the world. I believe that, and I will never not believe that.
It's such a beautiful message. It really is. I need a tissue. I'm tearing up. No, so this is great. I mean, I think it's unbelievable what you're doing, and I love the whole story of how it started as a child and what you experienced going through college and fighting and never giving up and believing in yourself and knowing you could do it. And we go through these struggles and we climb mountains, we go into valleys and we climb up again, and it's awesome. I think it's a great story.
Thank you so much. And, I've learned, I just want to share this too. I think that there's parts of my story I don't, just like how I said, I've never shared that because I had to get my whole head around that part of my story. And so sometimes, we're all kind of in that, remember when Oprah used to get everybody on the couch and there were these tell-alls, right? Or people should have these tell-all books. But I want to give because I had to give myself this, it's okay to not share every detail of your life with people. It's okay to be private.
Yeah.
And there's a beautiful discernment in that. To choose, it's a spiritual gift to have discernment, to know what is appropriate to share and what's not. And also, what do you want to put energy on? I have had a lot of hardship, a lot. But I don't necessarily want to put the energy there. That's not what I want to grow. I want to look forward and continue to manifest and grow goodness. Now, I'm not saying that eventually perhaps there could be some seeds that I share here, but I don't want to spend my time here. I was already there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not a vibration I want to stay in. That's not the where I want to be. But I can share some of the lessons that I learned here. They come through in my songs. They come through in my books. And I have a son who's 12. And I always told myself I would never share something with other people that I wasn't willing to share with my son. And so I think that's important, is that some of the more vulnerable things I've shared with him age appropriately. Like I would never want one of his friends to be like, hey, my mom read this thing on Facebook, that would hurt me if that touched him. So I think it's okay for people to be private. There's a different energy between being secretive and being private.
Oh, very much.
Very much. And so we can be self-lovingly private about things that don't necessarily need to be shared. And also sometimes we're just not ready to share it. My mom, sometimes, some of the things that are hard for me to share, it's not that I want to keep it from people. It's just hard for me to talk about. And we have to allow people to be okay not sharing with us. To let our friends and our family, that it doesn't have to be a tell-all episode all the time, that it's okay to let people go through what they've gone through, and that you're still loving them, even if they're not confiding all aspects of their life to you. It's not necessary. And compassion is allowing people to be where they are, so that I can sit with my friends and know they're going through a hard time, but I don't need to probe them about what they're going through. I'm here. And whether you share with me or not, I'm going to love you anyway. Right. And I'm here. And I may not be able to be exactly here for you exactly in the minute, because I got my own life too, but I'm here loving you, even if it's, from a distance, from not sitting, holding your hand. And I think we all could use a real good dose of that.
I learned this early on in my marriage, where it was the whole, was it Women Are From Venus and Men Are From Mars? Remember that book that came out a long time ago? And when they talk about this example about when a woman, let's say she comes home, she's had a rough day at work or some unpleasant experience, and she just wants to vent. The men are sometimes programmed to want to fix it, but you just need to be present. You just need to listen and be there for them. And I've really worked on that, through my marriage. And I think that's important. It's showing that kind of mutual respect and love and support.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We want to be heard. And I mean, that's the power of storytelling, right? Is that sometimes we just want to be heard. And I mean, that little girl who wanted to have a voice at the dinner table, who didn't, because I had 3 brothers who were talking, all these years later, I'm sharing all sorts of stories. My brothers are always like, what else are you going to share? But, we all have these beautiful stories and this beautiful, things to share. Or sometimes you're right, it's a vent. It's like a blah, and we have to be discerning about I call it an energetic throw up, like sometimes, like I got sick on a cruise this summer, right? We were on a cruise and I got super sick and I threw up all day long. It wasn't food. It was like I had a virus or something. They didn't know what was going on with me, but I had to go to the doctor and all this stuff. But anyways, the only thing that made me feel better obviously was throwing up. And that's what kind of like we do sometimes with each other, is that we have some pain inside of ourselves. And the way we get that out is we go all over other people. Okay?
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, I see that on Facebook all the time.
Right. So I don't feel good inside.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to all over you. And what happens inside of us when we throw up usually? We feel better. Right? So we feel better because I got it out. I got all the yuck out. I was feeling yucky, and now I've gotten it out. But what we do is then all of a sudden it's all over somebody else. So it didn't necessarily have to go on me. It could have gone someplace else, like your therapist's office, your journal, right? So we have to be very discerning about what we're doing there, right? And some people don't realize that they are energetically throwing up on other people. So that vent that we're talking about, sometimes we need to be like, well, I just want to share, right? Or I need to tell you how I feel. But sometimes that's just their stuff. it's not, it doesn't need to get thrown up on somebody else, right? And sometimes people will vent at other people, but it's not really any of this. It's none of your stuff, but I'm projecting it onto you because you looked at me that some way, or somebody said something that was all you. And so now I'm coming at you. And no, we can be like, nope, I got my rain slicker on. You're not throwing up on me. Redirect that over here.
Yeah.
So why is it important to help people feel good about themselves on the inside? Why is it important to give people tools of love to feel good on the inside? That's what I do. The self-love has to come from the inside. The ripple comes from the inside. So that we are throwing up yuckiness less on everybody, and instead we're feeling good on the inside about ourselves. So instead we're rippling love to other people. That's the difference. That's what my whole Ripple Love song is about, right? And everything that I do is about giving these tools of love, this treasure box of tools that goes in this affirmation series, and now will be for the little kids too. Is that these are magical wand is what you have inside of you. All this love that we have inside of us, right? But if we don't have these tools of self-love, this self-discernment, the awareness, if we don't have that awareness, then we're just going to go around the world when we're not feeling good. You're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem, you're the problem. Now I feel better. Until it fills back up again.
Yeah.
With yuck.
Yeah.
So the goal is to not have any yuck. Our kids don't really have yuck. They're naturally not have yuck, right? So we shouldn't have yuck either. So when we heal those parts of ourselves, when we put the medicine, the love inside of us, we can. It's a back and forth thing. So
that's a great message. This is good.
Okay, good. It's just like how I think.
So normally I'd ask, how can people get in touch with you and everything, but I mean, you've got gigs, you've got books, you've got all this stuff going on. I mean, how can people connect with you? What's the best way to do that?
No, it's an interesting world out there because, I'm on social media as Kathryn Cloward, also as Kathryn the Grape. It's a weird time, John, with like social media and stuff because you have to be there. Yeah. You have to have a presence. But, I also like, it's a weird thing to be like, I'm putting it out. Am I marketing enough? Am I on there enough? And, but also I've got stuff I got to do, right? So I'm like, my goal isn't to be on social media all the time. Right. But I would love, people can reach me at kathryncloward.com. All my books and music are there. I blog, write. I just kind of share like what we've done today. We've just talked. And that's kind of, what comes through me, the lessons I'm learning. I just kind of share that. And so you can connect with me by my name, Kathryn Cloward, on Facebook and Instagram and my website. And I do shamelessly market as much as I possibly can. It's a great tool. Social media is a great tool. Yeah. And then Kathryn the Grape. So Kathryn the Grape is on all those avenues as well. And I'm just doing my best to share my message, I just always be ABC. I'm like always be creating. Like in sales, it's always be closing, right? Yeah. You learn that in like Sales 101. Yeah. But for me, I was like, it's actually always be creating. Yes. And we all are always creating. Mm-hmm. We just have to trust those messages that come through us that, if you have an idea, you wouldn't be given the idea if you couldn't create it. If you weren't going to be also given the means to create it.
I want to say I highlighted something on that, and it really caught my attention. And where was it? I'm going to find it. But essentially what it was is what you had mentioned in these notes was that, you have these thoughts that pass by, and sometimes we discount them. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times those are the seeds for beautiful things that you can create. Yes. And if you just trust yourself and allow those seeds to flourish, you can always be creating wonderful things.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it does. And even people who are like, and let's say, I used to think I wasn't creative. I'll tell you. I mean, now people are like, what are you talking about? But I remember I was in this women's group with all these different women who were at that time were authors. They were spiritual advisors. There were sculptors. Renee, who was an author, she was. So I was around all these, and I was at that time I was running my food company. And I remember sitting there with all these women And I was like, there was like 8 of us in this room. And I just remember saying, I don't think I'm very creative. And my friend goes, what? What are you talking about? No, I hadn't read the book or song or anything publicly or anything like that at that time. And she goes, Kathryn, you have like an idea and then you make it a company. Like you're very creative.
Extremely.
And so why I say that is sometimes I encounter people who feel like their everyday life isn't creative, or they're perhaps like their accounting job or their fill in the blank. They're maybe not contributing to the world, in the way that they might think that other, comparatively to others. And I'm like, no, every day, whatever it is that you're doing, that you were gifted to do on this planet, what you do every day is an opportunity to seed other people, to do creative things, right?
Yes.
To use your brain, use your gifts to do wonderful things. So whether that's for numbers for you, or whether that's motherhood, that you're creatively coming up with different things for your children, your family, your fatherhood, all these different pieces of who we are. That's how collectively each of our individual pieces connect. We need all of us. We can't have, one of my brothers was like, we can't have all these Kathryns running around. You're like, it's like, well, you can. Yeah. But that everything, everything that everybody's doing is great. And so when we are in that high vibrating positive place, now we can also choose to be mucky. We can choose to be gossipy. We can choose to do things on this planet in the shadows. I call that, when you're in the shadows, you can't bring that to light. You can't tell somebody what you're doing. That's not integrity.
Right.
Right? And so when we're doing the wonderful, glorious, childlike things that make us joyful, all that together, that's beautiful. And look at what we can do on this planet if we all carried that and not the yucky, mucky stuff, The
world would be a wonderful place. It already is a wonderful place,
yes.
But imagine how much better it could be.
Yes.
I really appreciate what you're talking about, that place of high vibration. I don't usually use those words, but when you say it, I know exactly what you mean. Because when we're in that moment, it's special. Speaking for myself, I wish it happened more, so it's really just up to me, as an individual, just to make that happen.
Yeah, it's your choice. It's all of our choices.
Yeah, it's our choice, and maybe it's just releasing the filters.
Yeah, and to actively want to be there, right? Like, I love to walk. I love to go for these long walks, and I love to be outside. And it's actually the most important meeting I have every day. Like people who know me, like my walk, I got to go on my walk. It's not for like some massive exercise thing. It's because I'm communing with nature, I'm not sitting in front of my computer, which, I have to do a lot on my computer. But there's like a vibration in nature, right? So when we're outside, we're enjoying that, or music. I mean, who feels horrible around music? Everybody feels great because music is a sound frequency. It's a vibration. It is all a vibration, and truly. And so if we're always kind of like elevating ourselves higher to that place where we're feeling our best. Now, mind you, life does happen. Of course, there's some days where I'm like, oh my God, I don't feel so great. I'm not feeling so perky positive, but ultimately that's also my choice too. So instead of me mucking over people, I'll go, you know what? I need to be low profile today. I need to recharge my battery. We need to know what we need to recharge. And so, something like this show, you're allowing people to have a platform to share.
Yeah.
And people who are listening have to go, I resonate with that. Or I'm not really getting that. And if you don't resonate with it, you don't have to make an issue with it. You just don't pay attention to it. Right. What we're dealing with on Facebook right now is when people don't agree with something, they're like, I got to tell you. And so that doesn't need to happen. Just ignore it if you want. If you choose. Or you can choose to dig in. It's all up to you with what you energize.
Exactly.
So what message do you want to energize? What part of you do you want other people to receive?
Wow. This podcast, I said to you, was about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What did you call that in the very beginning before we got started?
Oh, yeah. I said, your podcast is about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's my jam.
That's your jam. Yeah, exactly. So this is awesome. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Hey, we jammed on it.
Yeah, we did.
That's an 80s song. Jam on it. Okay.
Okay.
My friends were like, Kathryn, pull it together.
I'm thinking of Town Called Malice from the band The Jam. Remember them?
No.
From the 80s? Yeah, that's like new wave. But all good. Our mind goes in all these
John,
places.
you got me to say jam on it. Like that's, hey, okay, this is good.
Okay. Thank you, Kathryn. This is
Thank
great.
you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share. I really do.
All right. Well, thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.